everybody. My name is Sal Abbinanti, and I want to thank, Sheehan is Dead Comics for having me on as a guest, and hopefully you'll like some of my ridiculous stories about Alex Ross and Kingdom Come.
Ladies and gentlemen, or as you're better known, Sheehanites, welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest, Sal Abbinanti. He is the agent and art dealer slash producer for the great Alex Ross of Kingdom Come fame. And Sal's going to be telling us about his origin story, how he became the agent and dealer for Alex Ross, and how this whole awesome Kickstarter of Kingdom Come has come to be. There's a documentary. If you've been living under a rock,
If you haven't
there's
lived,
a yeah, lived.
you haven't lived if you haven't watched it.
Yeah, and how can you watch it if you haven't lived? So it's on Kickstarter. Just search the Kingdom Come documentary. I myself have backed it for the Blu-ray. I want to see the whole. I think it's going to be 80 minutes.
Mm.
So super excited, and please like, subscribe, and share the video, and check out our back catalog and all the awesome guests we've had on prior. But without further ado, we're going to be talking to Sal Abbinanti. There he is. Woo!
Hey guys, how are you?
Hello.
Hi,
How you
Sal.
doing?
How are you?
All right, man. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. See the drawing table over your shoulder there with the light. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I actually got in this business to be an artist, and then Alex asked me to help him, and that was 25 years ago, and I got bit by a vampire. So
Indeed. Well, let's just rewind for one sec. So, what's your origin story? So, you read comics when you were a kid, or
yeah, no, I'm a com I yeah, from the jump, I was a comic guy and I wanted to be a comic artist. And then I went into advertising and I was a artist in at Leo Burnett. And my style was just too wasn't what they were looking for in the
Mhm.
90s. And I met Alex at Leo Burnett and he was working on Marvels and he asked me if I would help him sell some originals, and I said no. And then, I needed a way to make a living because I was bartending and working as a freelancer at the same time. So I went from there. But yeah,
Mhm.
big comic guy, big Marvel guy. When I started buying them on the spin racks.
What was
Awesome.
like the first one that made a major impression, or your very first one? Do you remember? You must.
Luke Cage,
Okay.
probably
Yeah.
because I grew up in an all Italian neighborhood, and nobody bought Luke Cage because he was a black superhero.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't care. I wanted superheroes. And
Mm-hmm.
my sisters would read, Little Lotta and Archie and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But Thor, Buscema's run on Thor immediately spoke to me. Thor 206 was like probably I carried it around and it's dog-eared and I still have it
Oh, that's cool.
because of Buscema's, compositions. And then when I saw New Gods, forget it. It was
Okay.
all over. Yeah, it was like I got bit by a vampire when I read New Gods, Jack
Mm-hmm.
Kirby,
Yep.
you know. So yeah,
Interesting.
right in there. But yeah, I just liked superheroes. I didn't really care about um but then you started gravitating towards certain artists. I didn't even know why. I didn't even really care about the stories as much as the artists. I was a huge Ramita, Gene Colan, John Buscema, Jack Kirby, Gil Kane.
Mm, sure.
Uh,
Well, they're all really
yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah. I really like Joe Kubert, his
Mm-hmm.
war stuff. I really like the roughness of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I was hooked right away.
Awesome. Now, as regards Alex, when you started helping him, was it before or after he did Kingdom Come?
Oh, before. Yeah, way before. We worked at Burnett, and Burnett is a sweatshop, Leo Burnett Advertising, and they get their pound of flesh out of you. And he drew it was entering the phase of advertising when they wanted photorealistic storyboards. And I did the straight ones, and Alex did the photorealistic ones. So he was a weird guy, as all artists are. We're kind of weird dudes. And I don't know, we found we liked comics. And then he showed me some samples of Marvels that he was working on. And I was like, wow, I don't know if they're ready for this in comics, but man, I knew there was there was some incredible stuff there. And then we became friends, and he took off. And then I remember when he was working on Kingdom Come, we would hang out at the bar on Thursday night. We had a group of local comic artists in Chicago, Angel Medina and Hillary Barta and Barry Crane and Alex and a few other guys. And he was developing Kingdom Come, like in his sketchbook. And he asked me if I wanted to be if I would help him with photo reference. And he asked me if I would model as Captain Marvel. So
Cool.
that haunts me forever, that I'm Captain Marvel in Kingdom Come. People, I had no idea it was going to take off, and people were going to ask me to this day, I sign copies of Kingdom Come as Billy Batson,
Hmm.
and I had no idea the I didn't even like the character of Captain Marvel, because I only knew him from the Saturday morning show, which was kind of weird. And I knew Captain Marvel from the Marvel version. So anyway, we became friends, and one thing led to another, and
Well,
25 years later.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my experience. I was in 1996, so I was 14 years old. I was 96 or 97, and I remember the trade paperback of Kingdom Come,
Mm,
and I remember being absolutely captivated because at that time I was reading comics. I was picking the issues up from the comic store, but I pretty much stuck to like Batman. This is, like fresh off of Nightfall into like No Man's Land and that sort of
yeah,
stuff.
sure. Great stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, so I was a complete Batman head, and I didn't really pay attention to anything else. But then one day, one of my friends had the Kingdom Come trade paperback, and I was captivated with Alex art. I was like, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. How did this guy do this?"
Yeah.
And so I've always been a fan from afar, and now on social media, when he posts his prints and whatnot, I always share them because they're always so beautiful. And when I learned that Kingdom Come was in an absolute edition,
Yeah.
I just gobbled it up and I bought one for myself and one for Scott. And I told him, I was like, listen, I said, this is before Scott opened it. I said, you can read this online or you can grab the trade paperback, but it's not going to do it justice unless you read it in absolute edition.
Yeah.
Like, this is how it should be. It's like going from a regular screen to IMAX.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this thing is such a marvel and it still strikes me like other people, hence the Kickstarter to this day. But I remember being captivated. I was like, I've never seen anything like this. So
It was interesting because it wasn't, I mean, it's hard to describe, because as an artist, I appreciated what Alex was doing. But as a comic guy, I always felt comics should be a product of your imagination. You just
Hmm.
make them up. You
Hmm.
don't really take a photo or whatever. Not, I mean, come on. I mean, Frazetta and Norman Rockwell, everybody, photo references, obviously nothing wrong with photo reference. But I was a Kirby guy. So
Right.
if Kirby drew a toaster, he just made up a toaster. He didn't look at a toaster. But when I saw what Alex was doing, I was like, wow, he's really kind of taking this stuff seriously. And I mean, a lot of which is, as artists and as comic people, we all did, but people outside of comics would just put just in front of it. It's like, oh, it's just comics, or oh, it's just, where it wasn't to us. And when you're younger, comics are like, you're passionate about them, but then when you get older, your parents are kind of waiting for you to kind of grow out of it. And it's
Hmm.
like, I was glad that I found people that never grew out of it, and it was like a passion. And Alex was passionate about it from the jump. I mean, he took this stuff like, when we went to shoot reference, there was no grab ass. There was no sort of kind of. He had his lighting right. He had his storyboards. It was like a movie. It was like he was setting up a scene in a movie.
Hmm.
And I had never seen that before. And so that was when I was like, wow, I had a lot of respect for him because of how much he loved and respected the medium of comics.
yeah,
Makes sense.
Scott and I went to New York Comic Con last year, and I mean, I've been there many times, but last year was
Hmm.
Scott's first time, Scott, and we went together.
Yeah.
And saw Alex display, and I
Yeah.
remember seeing his display every time, and always like, "Oh wow, there's Alex Ross display," and I just have to go buy it.
Right.
and like just go through each picture
Right.
and
Right. Right.
and wish wish that I had the spare change to bring one of them home
Yeah.
because they're that beautiful. They are
Mhm.
just absolutely excuse me, jaw dropping.
Yeah.
And
Are you
I just
involved with him on that process, the whole show deal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I run all that stuff.
Yeah. How do you like doing that?
When we started doing it, I started in Artist Alley and
Hmm.
I started, with a little table. And then over time, it just kind of progressed.
Hmm.
And I felt the same way. I just felt like, guys, if we're going to do this, let's do it. And I just felt that it wasn't just comics. I just felt we wanted to approach it from a much more seriously
Hmm.
and take it like Alex wasn't a comic artist. I just saw him as an artist. So I'm like, look, if we're going to do this, and these shows kept getting bigger and bigger, especially San Diego and New York,
How
and
many of them do you do a year? Do you just do
I,
those
I,
two big ones?
I keep it down to no. I do New York, I do San Diego, I do and the ones in Italy. I do Lucca and I do Lake Como. I do
Okay.
the four. And
cool.
I used to do Mocha, and I did a lot more. But you get married and you have
Yeah.
kids, your life gets more, you
Right.
know,
Hmm.
But I always wanted to approach it more as a gallery, so that's why I
Yeah,
kind of set it up as a gallery.
you sure
And
did. You
yeah,
sure did. You killed it. And it's just beautiful.
thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you. The way it's set up. When I go, when I walk by it, it's like Alex Ross. He's synonymous, just like that name. There's certain artists like Bob Ross, not, and
Hmm.
no pun intended, but
Yeah, no, I
you know,
get that. Yeah.
it's like there's power in the name. The name just grabs you and it like pulls you to the art and what you want to see. And so whenever I go to his gallery, his art stand, that's how it feels. It feels like a professional gallery. Like this is bigger than just some guy who, drew pictures of Batman or Superman. Like it's a prestige. There's a prestige to it.
I stole the idea from Dave Stevens and Bernie Wrightson. When I
Oh,
started,
really?
yeah, well, when I used to walk around, I went for many years with my portfolio, and I started going to San Diego and I started going to New York looking for freelance work with my book. You do your samples and you work them up and you're ready to take on the world. And I couldn't get arrested because they just didn't want that my work was not what they were looking for. And there was Artist Alley, and then there were exhibitors. And so I went, through Artist Alley. A lot of guys I knew were there. And then I walked around a little more where the publishers were. And then I saw Dave Stevens. And then I saw Bernie Wrightson. And you approach Bernie Wrightson or Dave Stevens, and like a lot of fans or artists and people do at shows with a little piece of paper, whatever, saying, "Hey, can you do me a sketch?" And Bernie Wrightson's like, "I don't do that.
Hmm.
This is what I pay. This is my list. This is my price list, or I'll sign your Swamp Thing or whatever." But they were the first two guys that I saw that were like, "No, we're here. This is our profession.
Hmm.
We're here as a business." And they upped their game by getting an exhibitor booth
Hmm.
and wanted to say, Artist Alley's great, but we're like, our names are more synonymous with, we're a brand. So
Hmm.
they treated it like they were a brand, like Bernie Wrightson and Dave Stevens was coming off a Rocketeer. So they had a logo and everything.
Hmm.
They had their booth set up like they were a company. So that's kind of when Alex asked me, "Hey, do you want to do this? Can you help me with this?" And I said, "All right," but the internet was just exploding, which changed the business forever, which especially the original art business forever. I said, "Okay, but we have to approach it like Bernie and like Dave did, which is we've got to treat you like a product more." And we got a logo and we went from there. And that's kind of, where I kind of got inspiration of how I wanted to do it.
I didn't realize Wrightson had done that he operated that way. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, he never was in Artist Alley. I mean, he was always had a 10 by 10, which
Hmm.
was, your basic
Bigger.
exhibitor booth.
Yeah.
And he had his originals there and he had people helping him or whatever. And again, no offense to Artist Alley, but a lot of guys who, you want a bigger space, you have more stuff to spread out, or you have a staff kind of helping you, and then you have prints and you have sketchbooks and then you have originals, and they have all three. So they needed more space. And then a lot
Sure.
of these guys, when Bernie was an invited guest, and the bigger names are invited guests, they kind of brokered that into their deal with the exhibitor to say,
Give me
hey,
space.
give me space. And I
Yeah.
don't want to be in Artist Alley because back in the day, I don't know if you remember, Artist Alley, you were thrown to the wolves. You didn't know who you were next to. You could be
Mhm.
next to, I mean, you could be next to Francis Manipo or Alex Nino or my guy
Nobody.
Rudy Nebres or Ernie Chan, or you could be next to a guy who's using little pieces of cardboard and he's drawing, a
Right.
Pokemon on him, and who's a guy who's got belt buckles, or he's making, and he's making shit out of a belt. You could be like you're at the county fair.
Yeah.
So Bernie would be like, wait a minute,
I'm not doing that.
I've been at shows where I had Art Spiegelman on this side and I had a guy on this side who I never fucking heard of who, couldn't get arrested, but because he paid $25 or whatever it was, he was
He's
in
got a
our
table.
alley.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Bernie was like, I don't want to be with those guys. I gotta have
Makes
my own
sense.
space.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
thank you for that, because that's a good tip. I was talking to Scott last year. I'm like, hey, maybe we should get a table at a show one day, and pay the fee and set up.
Well,
So,
now the only exception, let me give you the exception. The only exception to the rule of Artist Alley is New York. New York Comic Con has the greatest Artist Alley of any show you'll ever do on the planet
okay.
because of the quality of like the caliber of artists. Because guys come from New York, guys go to New York from all over the world to set up
Mhm.
in Artist Alley. So if you're going to do Artist Alley, do it at New York.
Okay.
But be careful because man, oh man, it is like a hit list of heavy hitters in Artist Alley at New York. Other
Yeah.
cons, you're stuck there with cosplay people. You're stuck there with celebrities that are there to, that bullshit. You got to put up with the guy from Planet of the Apes who
One of the first cons that I went to that was in New York was not the New York con.
It
Brian and
was the
I, it
Big
was
Apple Con.
Big
in
Apple.
Penn, whatever, across
Sure.
from Penn Station, and like
Yeah.
20 something years ago. And I remember that was like the first big con I had been to, or bigger. And I went through Artist Alley, and I'm thinking, oh dear, like
Yeah.
I can't believe these guys are here.
Yeah.
There was zero prestige,
Yeah.
zero, zero.
It was good for
That was the
buying.
one? Was that the one that was in like an old sporting goods store?
I'm not
It was
sure.
it was like two levels. I believe it was
Yeah,
two
yeah,
levels
it
when
was
you
the
walk
sporting
in.
goods store. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did that show where they had the escalator.
Yes,
The
the
escalator as
escalator.
soon as you
So
walk in. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
you
yeah,
would
yeah.
wait in
across the
line
Penn
so you
Sta-
could
and
see.
they put you at the Pennsylvania Hotel, and I checked out in the middle of the night because I could hear the rats running through the wall at the Pennsylvania Hotel.
No doubt.
That place had it was like something out of The Shining, that Pennsylvania hotel. It was not what it used to be, a prestigious hotel, and man, they let their shit go. But shows are all different. And
Right.
again, as an artist who you love what we do and we take it seriously, you'll be next to people that are not artists. They're
Right.
just guys selling storm windows, for Christ's
Yeah.
sake. So you're just
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be next to the guy selling storm windows. I'm an
Maybe you could do
artist.
like
I
a
take the shit
crossover.
serious, you know. Yeah. Or now Artist Alley is inundated on all sides by cosplay, by assholes that are these celebrities that are selling their signatures, and take a photo op with the Lacey Underall from Caddyshack or whatever.
That's definitely the Big Apple Con is definitely of
Yeah.
that ilk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's why I always say get a space,
Mhm.
get a partner, get a space. You got more room. You want to get up to go to the bathroom, you cover him, he covers you, and you can kind of set up and have your own lay of
Yep.
land.
Makes sense.
Well,
Smart.
this speaking of storm windows, this in no way dissuades anyone who wants to have Alex Ross paint on a window and pay for it. He'll put Power Girl on a window. for you.
Right, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome.
What
That's awesome.
would you care to speak to? You'd mentioned a few minutes back how the original art market was impacted by the internet. Would you like to tell us that
Well,
narrative?
what happened was when Alex asked me to rep them, I said no, because you guys remember how original art used to be. in the 90s and in the 80s and 90s, it was these guys had it thrown on the table like it was garbage. It was
Right.
production art. They kept it in Tupperware bins and the prices were written on the back in pencil. And if
Yep.
you ask them a question like, who is this? And they did get all mad. I mean, these guys were like, they were on Maxwell Street. They were selling, there was like a flea market mentality for
Yeah.
Mhm.
comic art. There was given no respect at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I said, no, I hate those guys. If you ask a question, they're all pissed off. Well, when you cut to the 90s, the internet and eBay and the ability for it used to be the only way you could buy an original piece of art was you had to go to the con. You had to
Mhm.
go to Wizard or you had to go to Penn, the show at Penn Station, Big Apple Con. Well, that all changed now. So now a $200, you could buy a Kirby page on eBay from guys all over the world or guys all
Right.
over the country.
Right.
And they started to set up websites. So when I started taking over for Alex, my first clients were guys from overseas. They were guys from Asia and guys from, from France and Germany who were like ecstatic at the idea of being able to buy a page from Kirby or Alex or whereas before there was no market for that. You had to physically, so the internet made the world a lot smaller to buy art and it exploded. It did it for everything. It did it for antiques. It did it for art. It did it for all that, where I noticed within a 6-month period, what used to sell for $50, $150 went to 1,000, and then it went to 2,000, and the
Mhm.
prices just kept going up.
Yeah. We've actually even we've talked to people about the process, whether they're using paper or they're doing it digitally. And Brian, I think you would recall this also. A couple of the younger guys that we talked to a bunch of people who were digital over the course of the last year and a half. But then more recently, like for example, V Ken Marion, we were asking him about his process, and he said that he's chose one of the reasons he's chosen to continue to work on paper is because of the secondary art market.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I
Hmm.
could, I agree. I mean, I think, look, I don't have a problem with Wacom tablets or the digital creation because my son is an artist and he does everything on a tablet and
Hmm.
but I think for guys like us who, that's how we were taught originally, was to the textile experience of art, which is,
Hmm.
I have to do paper and I have to do pencil and I watercolor and that. And Alex doesn't even have a computer. He refuses to use a
No
computer.
kidding. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't even, he's like, it's not, he uses it if he has to do a patch, he'll paint the patch and then we'll have a guy put the patch in for him, but he does nothing digitally.
Hmm.
And it's because we're kind of at the age where it's like, hey, this is all we know.
Hmm.
And digital is nice to facilitate and to help as a tool. But oh, yeah, no, guys like Adam Hughes and other guys that I've known that start, even Bill Sienkiewicz, who I work with, who sometimes to save time will do stuff digitally. Find that you're cutting your feet off there's no secondary market anymore for original art
Right.
because it doesn't exist because you're going digital.
Right.
If you've already established a clientele to buy your originals, you
Mm.
can, some guys do both. You can go, you do digital to speed up the process, or if you want to, if it's a commercial job and you need to make changes quicker, then the computer helps tremendously. But a lot of guys I know stick with the physical art
Yeah.
because of the art market.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. It hadn't really occurred to me. As soon as he said it, it made sense, but I hadn't
Mhm.
really, I didn't think it'd weigh in enough that it would make you decide. And I'm not saying it is for everybody, but in some cases, some of the artists are like, no, no, I'm not doing it because of that very reason.
Yeah.
Digital.
If you've got, or and it depends sometimes on, like for example, if you're Bill Sienkiewicz and you're doing a Batman cover is not the same as if you're doing a job for a gaming company.
Mm.
The gaming company, there's not as much of a secondary market for that artwork as there is if you're doing a mainstream Batman cover of
Sure.
collectors and people that are into Batman or buying art for, 20 different reasons.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I find just doodling in the past myself, I find just touching the paper, there's something intimate about that. you know, when your hand touches it, and then when you're drawing and you're
I couldn't
erasing.
agree more. I mean, there's nothing that it's the smell of an art store. I still
Mm-mm.
love the smell of an art store when you go into an art store. And most,
We know
you know,
there's one around here. It's called Arlene's,
yeah.
and it's like artist paradise. And like when you drive by, they have their own little, you know, billboard right there, and it's like, "Don't fear the blank page." It says,
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's all going to the internet now.
Right.
Everybody's buying everything off of websites,
"Yeah,
and there used to be a ton of art stores here in Chicago, and we're down to like the only ones you find are near universities.
Right. That makes
okay,
sense.
yeah,
Otherwise, the mom and pop art stores are all gone.
Hmm.
It's really sad because it's all gone digital.
mhm.
Mm.
And I understand that, but I'm a textile guy. I gotta have a sketchbook and gotta have the touch of the paper and the pencil.
Yeah."
Yep.
When I draw, I almost envision it, or an artist in general, like it goes to your brain, it goes to your heart, and then goes onto the page. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the I almost think of like you know, when an artist dies, the ink, excuse me, the pencil, you could still erase it almost as if it were alive, as
Right.
if the person transcends death because of what's on the
Yeah.
paper. You know what
No,
I
you're
mean?
right. Yeah.
And I feel there's just something highly intimate. And then when you're drawing and erasing and you get the lead on your hand and you got to
Yeah.
wash it off,
Yeah.
otherwise it gets all over the page. Like there's
You
something
either,
deeply,
it's either, because my son's at that age now where he's going off to college and this and that. And he's pretty good. He's a good artist, and I think he loves it. But you really can't. My wife's like, I told her, I said I could teach him how to draw, but I can't teach him to be an artist.
yeah.
The
Good, well,
artist,
well said, well said.
it's like running off to join the circus. The circus doesn't need you. You need the circus. It's
Mhm.
like we don't really have a choice. It's the same with musicians or writers or actors. You don't really choose it. It kind of chooses you.
Mhm.
And you have to do it. We have to have that creative outlet. Or I think it's a chemical thing where we have to have that flow or
Certainly.
something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Because otherwise, I find myself when I'm not trying to do something creative, I almost feel like I'm overburdened in my soul. Because you need to release that and
Yeah.
transpose whether it's positive or negative energy to transpose that in some healthy way. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
You don't
Now,
Do
know.
you rep? Go ahead, Brian.
as regards what you mentioned about auction, do you use Heritage at all, or do you use another dealer?
I
Or
don't use Heritage because I'm still Alex's, agent. I'm a straight rap 1-to-1.
oh,
Uh,
okay,
I have, the secondary market. A lot of people use Heritage for, uh, you know, they buy it from me, and whatever, it's theirs. They could do whatever they want with it. And people, some people, there's different types of people that buy art. You either buy it as an investment, or they buy it to sell it, or they buy it just because they like they want a painting for the wall. They want it for themselves. So I don't ask too many questions. Heritage is the art market has gotten crazy, as you guys know, I thought it might cool off after COVID, but in fact, I think it's gotten crazier. It's continuing to get crazy. But that's because I do believe this is kind of our time. This is the sweet spot of our generation, grew up with this stuff. And we're looking for pieces of almost of our past that we want around us to remind
yeah,
us, when
dude,
life is so
isn't that true?
complicated.
It's like in what we read and draw, and with comics, it's like
Yeah.
there was something special about turning to that specific page. We
Yeah.
we can remember where we were,
Yeah.
and like what it
It,
smelled
it it's
like,
like
and
it's like Midnight in that film Midnight in Paris. It's kind of like I believe the comic artists that we grew up. This is kind of like what Basquiat and what Warhol and those guys during the 60s were. This is who they are, that phase. This is who these guys are to us now in our generation, who we're
Mm.
not kids anymore. But we're getting a lot of people also out where it's becoming a viable piece of Americana and pop art is where the biggest the ones that are spending, I follow all the auctions and I bid on things until they get ugly. But John Buscema Wolverine #1 cover, just sold for $670,000. That's not a guy who's just casually into it. Those are people who know that buying comic art is a good investment, and they know that it doesn't take a genius to Google what art used to sell for 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago, and see how the price. Same with CGC books, which I'm not a fan of, but people go crazy for them and buy
Mhm.
them. Graded books. Look at what graded books go for. I mean, it's a piece of a legitimate piece of Americana for guys our age now who have disposable income, and a lot of it too is guys that have money that they need to get rid of. You know, gotta, you
Yeah,
gotta you
yeah,
gotta launder your money, so to speak, or
yeah.
you need a tax write-off.
Uh-huh.
So, but hey, when people ask me as a dealer, they think I'm telling them that because I'm a dealer. I'm like, guys, I'm a fan as well. I don't buy art and sell it. If I buy a Kirby page, it's because I love Kirby. I don't care that it's got to be from a certain period. And I'm like, I bought a Black Panther page the other day from Kirby, and most people are like, oh, but Sal, it's not. I'm like, I don't care. It's Kirby, you know.
Mhm.
And
You
but
weren't the guy who bought that Rob Liefeld page, were you?
no, no, the one that went for nine
Yeah,
something. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
those are guys those are Hollywood guys. Those are guys
Mm.
that have money that they need to get rid of, and that's fine. I get it because this is not our little thing anymore. This
Yeah.
is it's become part of pop culture. It's Americana.
Whatever you may have to say or feel about the last 25 years or 20 years, give or take, of the MCU and the rest of it,
Mhm.
um, here it is, right? I mean, even if you're not a fan of the films, this is part of the outfall of the impact that 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 wave of stuff has created, in part.
I wish it would make people go out and buy comics.
Yeah, right.
Only unfortunate thing about the films and the TV shows is it hasn't made a dent. It hasn't moved the needle in comics. When I hear, New York Comic Con, oh, there were 250,000 people, I always say, yeah, buy a comic.
Mhm.
Nobody's buying any comics. I mean, the
Mhm.
saddest thing about New York Comic Con, I mean, you guys were there this year or last
Like,
year.
well,
He
I
was
was,
there for both.
yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you noticed or not, but as an exhibitor, I've been doing Comic Con, I mean, New York for over 20 years. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed or not, but the three biggest exhibitors there now are manga.
Mm.
And there's no more Marvel booth. There's no more DC booth, which used to be an anchor of the show. There's no more,
Mhm.
there's no
I
Dark
noticed
Horse.
that there was no DC booth this year because I used to
No
always
D.
get a wristband to like have somebody sign my comic.
It's not just that anymore, guys. There's no Dark Horse, there's no Image, there's no Boom, there's no American publishers there anymore. And to me, New York was always the center of the publishing universe. And when I go to New York and I don't see DC doesn't have a booth because of the shakeup of Warner Brothers and all that, and comic publishing has become much different in the last 10 years. It's kind of sad because
Mhm.
I didn't see any American publishers there. I'm not into manga, so I don't,
Me neither.
No,
Me
yeah.
I'm not
neither.
either. I'll
But
be
and
honest with you. For me, I get more joy out of our local TownieCon in Albany, New York than I do of New York. That's why I didn't go to New York this year. It's
yeah,
like more aggravation and too much stress for me. It's just not my thing. And I know that there's hardly any comics. I did buy some comics when I was in New York last year, but it's a lot easier and a lot less stressful, and there's more of them it feels like at the small con than there is at the big one.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I used to like to walk around, when I do San Diego, and I would take a couple hours on a Sunday and walk around and file through some long boxes and things like that. I don't walk around anymore because it's an ocean of exhibitors,
Mhm.
and I'm right there. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say I'm not an exhibitor. But the guys, I used to love to go to Bud Plant and see what books he had. I used to love to go walk and see what the other guys were selling in the long boxes. And so much of it has become graded CGC books and show exclusives or one of a kind. And you're not even supposed to take the damn thing out of the box, out of the bag and
Yeah,
read it.
right.
That
Yeah.
it turns me off. I wind up, guys, I got to be honest. Every time I go to a comic store, I wind up buying back issues of
Hmm.
whatever, Daredevil, Gene Colan, or Iron Fist, or I don't even look at the new stuff because I don't know what the hell's going on. Unless
Same
somebody
here.
turns me on or says, "Hey, this guy's in," I like what JR is doing with Spider-Man or something like that, then,
Yeah.
I'll buy comics. But I always tell people, you're going to a con, buy some comics, man. Go to
Mhm.
Artist Alley and see if you see any indie guys that are there, you know,
Well, you
because
know,
those
the one good thing about the cons these days is I hear you can get really good specials on storm windows.
probably. I saw a guy there selling stormers. I also saw a guy one time selling wrestling mats.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, I didn't know or it's like being at the auto show. And you got the guy with the knives, with the microphone around his neck.
Oh,
Yeah, I see.
look at this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
those.
He's got the sham wow. The guy,
Yeah, wow,
sham.
you just took me way back. That guy
Yeah,
was wild.
the guy had some Germany, so it's got to be a good product.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
It'll wipe up anything.
right. And they got a hole in the counter, so when he cuts the onions, he pushes them in the hole.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Thought I'm in the
The
That's
hole.
whole comes for free.
Yes. I tell guys, go to Artist Alley, man, buy some comics, I mean, it's like show your support for guys that are there because it really is one of those things where it's like, God, it's unfortunate, but you're absolutely right. It's becoming less and less about comics.
Yeah, you touched on a few things there, Sal, that I just want to catch up on. So firstly, as regards what's coming out now, I've told Scott this, and I've told other artists we've had on, or even other guys from YouTube who are about comics. I've said I feel like DC. I've never really read Marvel. I have nothing against it. I have to catch up, but I'm DC head, and I'm like, I feel like DC has politely or impolitely told me, we no longer want your business. Like this isn't
Yeah,
for you. You know what
no,
I
you're
mean?
right. I
And
agree. Yeah.
and so I'm buying back issues of things if I want them. And as regards, excuse me, the CGC thing, a handful of years ago, I got the bug for CGC, and
Yeah.
I went overboard. And then I noticed that a lot of the secondary market, like, or when I buy it from, say, you, and I'm thinking in 2 years, this like hot Miles Morales first appearance is going to like double my money or triple it. I go to resell it, and depending on what time of year it is or whatnot, I'm either breaking even or maybe making a couple of $100 extra, not what I purported to want.
Right.
So
Right.
that's something that I've kind of pushed away. I've told Scott, I said, for CGC, I've come to find out, as regards an investment, for anything modern, no. If you have the money to play with the big boys and get, like a number one Stan Lee, like X-Men that he signed before he died,
Right.
that's worth the investment of the
Yeah.
grade for me personally. But
Yeah.
as
But you know,
regards
wait a
getting,
minute though, of the 7 million that they published, he signed six of them.
yeah, and and
Well,
so
I think it's kind of like it's kind of like the stock market, though. With CGC, if you're going to play with the bigger stuff, you have to keep track of it. So to know when to get out and know when to get in and when to hang on. And look, I think it's great. I thought CGC was a bubble that was going to burst 10 years ago, and it's only gotten crazier.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, for me, when I'm at a show and I see all these different revenue streams now of what people are doing to make money, I'm like, hey, whatever, because I'm running out the clock at this point. How many more years am I going to keep doing this? So I love comics. I love to draw, which is why I'm still here. I got a family and I can't eat top ramen 3 times a day anymore. Like when I was in college, living on trail mix and Jello. But my first San Diego Comic Con, I slept in a bathtub, because I shared a room at the DoubleTree with 10 guys. So when people go, "Oh, but Sal," I'm like, guys, I don't want to hear it. I was that guy. When I started doing cons, I was like there, sharing a room, at some flea bag hotel, sleeping on the floor, just because I loved it and I wanted to do it.
Right.
sure,
I
sure.
wanted to be a comic artist, and it didn't work out. So I had to pivot and self-publish and do my own thing.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
well,
cool that you were able to be as successful as you are in that pivot because it doesn't always go that way.
Yeah,
yeah.
well, it doesn't hurt when you have Alex Ross. I
Mhm.
mean, Alex was a tremendously hardworking guy. When people were like, "Oh, we're going to be the next Alex Ross," I'm like, good luck, because Alex
Mhm.
is a tremendously hardworking guy. And
Yeah.
Alex was the only guy I knew, even an artist that I ever met, where I said, Alex, what was your plan B
Huh.
if it didn't work out? and you couldn't be an artist.
Let me guess. He didn't have one.
He didn't have one.
Oh,
Exactly. He said, nope, Sal, I always knew it was going to work out.
yeah. We wasn't going to allow space for a plan B.
No, same with Bill Sienkiewicz. Bill Sienkiewicz told me the same thing. Bill Sienkiewicz said that it scares him now because he said, I couldn't do anything else. I don't know what the hell else I would have done had I not walked into Marvel. Bill walked into Marvel and they gave him Moon Knight, when he walked into Marvel. But that doesn't always happen. I mean, he got, it's funny because I was watching an interview with Elton John, and Elton John said the same thing, that Elton John was a studio musician. He did, he did scores. He didn't write lyrics.
Right.
So he would go around to all the different offices to try to get gigs, and he was rejected, constantly rejected. So one guy he went into, and he said this haunts him to this day. One publisher that he went into to say, hey, I write scores. Can you hire me? He's like, no. So he goes, all right. Finally, the guy on his way out, he goes, all right, look, see in the corner, that big pile in the garbage? He goes, those are all songwriters who sent me lyrics. He goes, take one of those envelopes out of the garbage and take it home and write something and come back in a week and I'll listen to whatever. So he gets on the train and it was the envelope from Bernie Taupin, who wound up being his partner, a prolific writer. Had he picked any other envelope,
who knows?
Like I would have been just another in the UK,
right?
Playing weddings, probably, to make money at the piano.
That's a great story.
And he's like, that haunts me. He goes, my God, I happened to pick the envelope where the minute I opened it, he goes, oh my God, this guy's incredible. This guy's a great, even though Bernie Taupin was unheard of at the time, he was trying
but it resonated.
Yeah. He was just like, he was trying to break in like Elton John was. So these guys, Alex didn't around. I mean, he was never sort of kind of with anything when it comes to comics. So that's why I said, all right, if we're going to do this, then let's really try to do it. And I approached him like, you're not just a comic artist, you're an artist. I don't want to hear that, oh, I'm just a comic artist. You're an artist. I mean, Norman Rockwell in his day was frowned upon.
Right.
He was seen by his peers. He was seen as a commercial artist.
Yep.
And his stuff was thrown in the garbage. It was tossed.
Another guy, we just went to his where we live. We're not too far from where his house is and the museum. And they had moved his personal studio. It's a small building, and moved it into the space from where it originally was just in the past couple of years. Anyway, we went and took a tour. And he again, someone with a tremendous work ethic. They just said he would work 16, 17 hours a day, but at times when he had a deadline, and he could just grind it out. And that's why he got, I mean, of course he's super talented, but to get to the place where he got to be able to just produce.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
interesting.
For a lot of guys, it's just, it's just all they know. I mean, it's like, it's what created, did the artist create the person or the person create the artist? It depends on where you're at. And we all come to it with different demons, so to speak, about why we're artists and why we have to do this. And, for me, it was like, I knew the minute I saw, comics, I'm like, wow, there's something here that, I loved. And so when it became, like you were saying before about the Marvel universe with the movies and all that stuff, I'm like, yeah, that's great. But it's sad when most people have no idea that Black Panther was a comic that was created by two Jewish guys. I think that they have no idea. I mean, they don't know that Iron Man was a comic from the 60s. They're like, really? I told my wife that. We're at the theater and I got, the Gene Colan Black Light poster, in my office that I've had for 20 years. And she's like, who is this Iron Man? I go, the poster in my office, where he's pushing the walls apart, that's Iron Man. She's like, I don't know. I never paid attention. And
right.
Most people have no idea the origin. And I knew comic artists that didn't know the origin of Spider-Man till they saw the movie. Wow. That kind of was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah. Not everyone's a historian though, I mean, we kind of like that part it's what makes it exciting for us, and we like to talk to the folks that we get on the show about that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And on occasion, we do run into somebody, and we're trying to uh, go back and like find more foundational their thoughts on foundational, and it'll just be like, whoosh.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
that happens, I'm always like, oh, this is going to be a tough interview, you know.
Yeah. No, I had a friend of mine, and he's a really good artist. He's a Italian guy, and he broke into the business maybe 15 years ago, and he got offered a couple of variant covers on Green Lantern, and he
Mhm.
calls me up and he goes, "Tell me about this Green Lantern." And,
Who was it we just had this doing Green
and I
Lantern,
was
Bry?
kind of like, okay, you're painting, you're drawing, you're doing a Green Lantern cover, but you don't know who Green Lantern is. I was like, wow, that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Hey, am I seeing a Patrick Nagel in the back there? Up against the behind the table, up against the window, the white faced woman on the floor.
No, that's she. That's Alex did a cover for Billy Tucci's book She, and he used my wife as the model for She.
It
So
looks
that yeah,
striking from here. I mean, you can't
it's
really
similar to a Patrick Nagel piece. You're right though, but no, that's
kind
an
of
Alex
basic in the
piece.
color scheme.
Yeah, very because She is just a white-faced character. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's a Alex piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
As just as regards people not knowing, Scott and I went to that TownieCon he mentioned, and he saw a dark side, and he called it Dark Seed, and I was ready to disown him like on the spot. I was like, dude,
Yeah, it happens.
But that said, I mean, in fairness, I had read as a kid, I had read comics with Dark Seed in them, and I just I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was never in the geek culture. I just happened to read comics.
Yeah. That's what was brilliant about Bill Sienkiewicz when I started working with him, and we were talking about a logo. His logo was he wanted his name phonetically like it's in the dictionary because his whole life nobody ever pronounced his name correctly.
yeah, he's got a tough
So
one.
to this day, people are like, his logo is spelled differently than the way he writes his name, but he's like, no, I don't care because at least they say it correctly now.
Hmm. Yep. Understood.
He
Yeah.
goes, oh, I've been a Mr. Sinkowitz. I've been a fan of yours for 25 years. He's like, yeah, but you don't know how to say my name. I mean, I get that 300 times at every con I do where they come up to me and tell me how I'm their biggest fan and they're my biggest fan and they love my work. And Alex, you're so this and that. And I'm like, I have to stop them immediately and go, I'm not Alex Ross. So I'm always amazed that they're my biggest fan, but they don't know what I look like.
You should tell him, be like, well, I'm wearing my toupee today, so thank
I
you.
get it 1,000. Oh my God, Alex, so you can't believe it. I'm like, wait. And I try to stop them and they won't let me stop them because they want, and then I feel so bad, they say, thank you, but I'm not Alex. And then they turn immediately like, well, I don't want to talk to you,
Oh boy.
you got to talk to Alex.
That's terrible.
You ever
Oh
see
man.
that scene in The Right Stuff where the guy goes, hey, John Glenn, and he goes, oh, I'm not John Glenn. John Glenn's over there. And the hillbilly guy goes, well, where's Glenn? I want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to you.
Mhm.
I get that 100 times a day at cons where they're like, I don't want to talk to you. Where's Alex?
That's
I'm like,
funny.
When just a few more things, Sal, and thank you very much for your time. This
Yeah,
I'm
we're-
really enjoying your company. Thank you.
sure.
When you sell when someone buys something, do you put it in a frame for them, or do they get it a certain way? Like how does
No,
that work?
no, and I'll tell you why, because everybody's tastes in frames is different. Nobody ever likes the frame that it's in because, some people we have a theme. I like just straight black with a white bordering, photography style, keep it
Right.
simple, and UV glass. So when you see pieces that shows frame, those are just for, and I tell them, I go, guys, this is just for presentation
Display.
purposes.
Right.
You want to get home and I put them in plexiglass because when we ship stuff, if it breaks, it doesn't hurt the art. If it's glass, it'll cut into the painting.
Yeah.
But nobody is ever happy with the framing. They always
It's true.
want, oh, my wife's got to, it's got to be brown or this. So I say, I ship you the original. I give them recommendations on how to ship it. Be sure you use UV glass and museum. Now it's gotten a lot better versus before. They used to use acidic tape and different things that would disintegrate over time. But no, I don't do anything. If we sell giclées and prints, we offer them framed. but it's just one standard way of, it's a black frame with a white border.
Yeah.
Okay. So when someone buys something from Alex, it is there a typical page length that he works with? And
His standard cover size is 10 by 15 live.
okay.
And then there's more of a bleed outside of it of a few inches. He uses Strathmore 4-ply, 3-ply sometimes, but usually it's 3 or 4-ply Strathmore illustration board. And sometimes it'll work a little bigger, but usually it's a standard 10 by 15 live area. A gouache, he only uses watercolor, gouache watercolor.
Hmm.
That's it. No acrylics, nothing past that.
I'm a little bit surprised by that in a way because at least to me, I haven't seen a lot of the work. Having worked through Kingdom Come, I wouldn't walk away from it thinking watercolor.
He likes gouache the most because he's able to layer it. He's
Mhm.
able to, in his old way of working was he would lay his darks first. And then if you do it, you have to be subtle with the water, not use too much water. You can lay
Right.
that on top of a gray, and then they enhance each other. They don't bleed into each other.
Hmm.
And gouache is kind of there's a discipline to it because if you use too much water, then they just wind up
Yeah.
muddying each other. Whereas Alex likes to layer
Right.
colors.
Yeah. It seems very dense or not as translucent as you might expect.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No, he's a gouache guy from the beginning.
Okay.
Now, as regards commissions, is it only based on if someone wants a certain thing that would meet a certain price point? Like if someone reached out to you?
He doesn't do them.
Okay, he doesn't do them.
Never
Okay.
done commissions.
Okay.
He's always been and it's the same with covers. Guys will come to me and want to commission him for, a book or a project or this. And if time's allotted, because Alex is very structured in his deadlines, sometimes it comes down to, no, I got nothing. No, I'm not. It's not something that I can lend something to, or he'll be like, oh, that sounds really cool. Or yeah, okay, I'll do that. But
Mhm.
it's never like, oh, it's not a big enough book or it's not a big enough title. He's at this point, he just wants to do stuff that he
Wants to
likes.
do.
He
Yeah.
thinks it's cool, he'll do it. I
Hmm.
mean, that's why, a few years ago we did Universal Monsters because he's a big fan of Universal Monsters. And he did the Beatles, Yellow Submarine, and David Bowie and other stuff because he's a fan. He's a huge fan of the Monkees. So he's done a couple of
Oh,
pieces
the
of the
monkeys. I
Monkees.
remember them. Well,
Yeah.
the monkeys.
So, sometimes people are like, oh, I guess I'm not big enough. It's like, no, that's not it at all. It's not
It's
his thing.
not that you're not big enough. It's just that I'm disinterested.
He's just like, I got nothing. Or like when Transformers came out and they were doing it
Yeah.
in the comic, he's like, oh my God, they did in the movies. He goes, what am I going to paint Transformers like? He goes, look what they did in the movies. He goes, they don't need me. He goes,
Mhm.
they can CGI that to death.
Mhm.
And then sometimes gaming, we turned on a lot of gaming because Alex is not a gamer. He doesn't
Mhm.
play video games. So
Mhm.
he's like, I don't know that. Well, what is that? And I explained it to him. He's like, oh God, I don't want to do that. I was
I think
like,
that's smart to stick
he
to what you
doesn't play
know.
video games. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he'll be like, I don't even know what that is. So he'll be
Yeah.
like, no, well, what else? And I'll be like, no, that's, he's like, all right. And he's,
Got it.
like, he's
That's
like,
that's awesome.
yeah,
I
he just likes
appreciate
to
that.
paint what he wants to paint.
Fair
Sure,
enough.
I appreciate that. Do you think that art will ever, because not, going back to CGC and all the other companies that grade stuff, they're grading posters, they're grading VHSs, they're grading
Yeah,
this, that, and the other thing.
yeah, yeah.
Do you think that original art will get to the point where they grade like the paper, even though
I
the
don't think
picture is
so.
pristine?
I don't think so. I
Uh,
think it has to do with because the problem with that is that sometimes the coolest stuff is the stuff that's aged. The
Mhm.
yellowed Neil Adams Green Lantern with the where you could see the mark where the rubber cement was where they put the word balloon or where it fell off or now I mean so an original art is a one of a kind.
That's
mhm.
it.
Whereas a CGC book is not one of a kind. It was a published piece where there's multiple copies. So the grading, I could see why they grade it based on it's all about the book and about the condition of the book. An original piece of art, I've had art that I have that I can't do anything with because it was sent back to us damaged. So I won't sell a damaged piece of art because the guy who I sell it to is going to sell it. And then if something happens, they're going to say, well, I bought it from Sal damaged. And then you're in the art world, your reputation is 100% of everything. If
Certainly.
word of mouth, if you're out to gouge somebody on this deal, it always comes back and bites you on.
Sure.
It's kind of like having a restaurant. It's not about business. It's about repeat business. It's about people who come back. I don't think so. I've had people ask, like, hey, can I get a certificate of authenticity? And I'm like, he signed it at the bottom. I mean, it's a one of a kind. I don't know what else you want me from me. I mean, or it's like double signed books. I love when I see that. Like Stan Lee signed it twice.
Yeah, I don't get that.
What the hell does that mean? I don't understand.
Just to make sure it's real, he signed it.
Right. So you want twice the money because he signed it twice? I don't get it. I mean, it's so I say, when they ask for COAs, I go, I don't give COAs.
Sure.
Well, I appreciate that. Especially what you said about reputation, I've told Scott this and some of the people we've had on is like, even in interviews, and the same thing with sales, like someone buys something or comes on, all right, thanks, have a nice life. But the older I get, I realize it's about relationships with people.
It's all about relationships. You could not be more correct. When it comes to business or it comes to friendships or the business itself, it's all about friendships. And there's nothing worse than guys in the business who are only friends with you when they're sizing you up to see if there's something you can do for them.
Amen.
I mean, those guys I run away from because I can always tell in the first 5 minutes. Sometimes when people call me, I'll write a number down and it's how many minutes before they ask me something about, can Alex do this for them? And it's like, I always want to say, what do you want? Just it's like when someone calls to borrow money. They hum their way through the conversation and you go, he wants to borrow money. You can always tell when they want to borrow money. So you almost want to say, just get to it. How much do you want? Let's not at each other. We're not kids anymore.
Right.
I know when they come to me, 99 times out of 100, it's about Alex. It's like being a Silver Surfer. They want Galactus. They don't want me.
Hey, but you know what? Silver Surfer ain't a bad gig now.
That's what I tell people. I'm like, they always go, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to Alex. I go, well, I'm here to find a planet for him to consume.
You could be that planet. Depends on what you say.
Right. I go, you gotta, it's not how it worked out. I wanted to date Cindy Crawford and that didn't work out. So I lived with it. It's the same way where I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to Galactus. I'm like, well, I don't want to be in silver, but I am.
Did you ever get to meet Cindy's proxy?
I get it all the time. I don't want to talk to you. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. And then, they'll try to approach Alex and Alex will go, Alex doesn't want to deal with it. And he'll be like, did you talk to Sal? And you're like, yeah. And he's like, what did he tell you? He said not to bother you. And Alex will be like,
what are you doing? Yeah.
Well, why are you bothering me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. It's like the capo and the Godfather.
I tell people it's like when people want me to rep them, I say, guys, I'm like Tom Hayden. I got one client.
There you go.
I mean, I know Alex. I don't work for Alex. We've been partners for 25 years. So I don't know, I mean, I'm personally invested with Alex in terms of we know each other forever.
Sure.
So I'm like, you want me to rep you? I'm not the guy to rep you. You need somebody to rep you who really is personally invested in your work. And I'm not that guy because I got Galactus. I can't give you the attention that I give him. And that's just how it works. So,
as regards that, but before we let you go, please tell us about the Kickstarter, because I backed the Blu-ray. I am super excited for it.
We decided before COVID we wanted to do a doc about Alex, and doc is you get tired of saying documentary, you just say doc. It's out of laziness. So we were going to do a documentary about Alex, but it kind of really was kind of not going right. It wasn't working in that direction because he's a private guy and he really, I wasn't going to follow him around and show him shaving in the morning. He's not that kind of guy. So we pivoted to what we discovered through social media and everything we did for Alex in posts or everything. Or if you did a signing with Alex and you looked at the line,
Mhm.
2/3 of the line is holding Kingdom Come.
Mm.
So whether he wants it that way or not, his definitive work will always be Kingdom Come. I mean, he's
Mhm.
done a lot of great stuff over the years, but that's the book that spoke to his fan base the most.
Mhm.
And it was almost like the Godfather for DC fans. It was it spoke to them.
Mhm.
So I said, you know what? Maybe we'll pivot and we'll do a doc about Kingdom Come, the making of Kingdom Come, kind of like behind the band, so to speak.
Mhm.
Because I was there when he was putting it together, and we got a lot of interesting stories. And anytime I would tell Kingdom Come stories at cons or when I would get drunk, people really liked it. So I thought, hey, maybe we'll get some of the models back together and get Mark Wade and get, a lot of the guys involved and get Alex to tell some personal stories. His dad being Norm McKay, a minister, a real life minister. And Alex, the people in the book were real people he used. So I said, okay. And then we hit COVID. So the project got stalled for over, 2 years. And then we came back and we realized we had a lot of footage and stuff we needed to cut together. And people could not have been nicer. Todd McFarlane and Brian Polito and Jimmy Palmiotti, a lot of people that all contributed could not have been nicer about doing interviews, and Bill Sienkiewicz and stuff like that. So when the last two indie books that I did, the last two indie comics I did, Atomica and The Hostage, I did them through Kickstarter because I had done the self-publishing route before, where you go through Diamond and there's that whole net of how you do stuff. And I found there's a tremendous audience through Kickstarter that loves the independent spirit
Mhm.
through Kickstarter. So I kind of knew how to do a Kickstarter, even though they're a kick in the ass in terms of how much work they are and how much
Yeah.
it's all about order fulfillment. If you don't get order fulfillment, you're dead.
Right.
So I said, my buddy, my director, Ramzi Atasi, he's like, hey, he's done indie films and he's put them on Kickstarter because there's an indie community of filmmakers on Kickstarter as well. And I said, great, why don't we? My goal was to just get my production money back, was just to break even and get this thing out there. Because I had no delusions that Netflix was going to call me and I was going to be walking around with a beret and a cigar and have my feet up on the desk, Oh, hey guys, and I'm Fred Flintstone, the day they let her be boss. I wasn't, I just wanted to get my dough back because we'd been working on it for 3 years. So we did the Kickstarter campaign and it went well. We hit our goal, and we're doing order fulfillment. We're going to be delivering everything, probably end of February, beginning of March.
Okay.
And then we're also going to have, past that, we're going to be able to, we'll be able to buy it eventually once we do all our order fulfillment as a product. We'll sell it at the shows and things like that because I had no idea people still want the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I thought Blu-rays and DVDs were dead, that everything's all cable now. But
I
then
think things are starting to switch back toward hard media to some extent.
people love the Blu-ray. And so we were like,
yeah.
my friend's like, you should offer a Blu-ray. I'm like, get out of here. Nobody wants a Blu-ray anymore.
Bless your friend. Bless your friend.
I'm like, wow. I'm like, so I said, okay, let's do it. So just like with comics, you offer a signed version, an unsigned version, and you offer, different price points and different stuff. So it worked out great.
Cool.
We could not have been, more appreciative of the indie market that said, yeah, we want this thing.
Absolutely. I'm a sucker for special features. I think they've really gone down the tubes in recent years. So something like this is like so up my alley. I'll watch it multiple times by myself late at night, during the day. I'll be all over it.
Well, the cool thing also when we did the Blu-ray, when we were working with the vendor to burn the Blu-rays, was that the new Blu-ray is there's no, used to be, remember you had to have two Blu-ray, you had to have two discs because if it went over 3 hours, I think you had to have a second disc. The new technology, oh my God, you could have like 7 hours on one disc. So we had hundreds of hours of interviews that we can't put them all in the film or people want to kill themselves.
Because, how long is it?
It's right around under 90 minutes, but we have another 90 minutes of uncut footage of all the stuff that didn't make it, of Alex and of Todd McFarlane and Mark Wade.
Are you doing something with it, or?
Yeah, it's in the Blu-ray. So when
Oh,
you
so
get,
both
it's
of
in
them are in
all.
there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, when you
awesome.
get your
That's
Blu-ray, we added an additional 90 minutes in there
okay,
for
super.
people that want to hear Alex talk about, his process in the book and his motivation. And also we got some great interviews with these guys that it just couldn't make the cut. They're just, you have to at some point, the first couple of rough cuts you want to throw up when you see them because they're just going nowhere and you got to have a narrative. And also we had to make a film for everybody
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
your wife can watch it and not go, who is this?
Yeah, but she
Otherwise
doesn't know who Iron Man is. Come on.
Yeah.
my wife doesn't know, have a clue who Tony Stark is. So if you make a movie just for comic, even though we knew we had to check all the boxes for Kingdom Come fans, we also had to have some type of narrative in there that for people who weren't into comics can go, all right, I never read Kingdom Come, but now
It's an interesting story.
I'm interested. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some appeal to it
Sure. That
because,
sounds super awesome. If Brian wasn't excited about it before, he's definitely excited now.
Yeah. I'm
Brian,
even
there's a
more
lot of
excited.
we put in a lot. We got some great interviews that we just didn't have the time to, they couldn't all make the cut.
No, that's fine. Two 90-minute discs, that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of the funniest one in there. I won't, oh wow, I'm not ruining it for you, but the funniest one was where we fly out to Phoenix and we're interviewing Todd McFarlane
Toddy.
and Brian Polito. And Todd is a really nice guy. So we're talking to him and he's talking about when he discovered Alex and Alex's influence in the business and how great he is. And then we handed him Kingdom Come and we're like, well, what was your reaction when you first read Kingdom Come? And he's like, I never read Kingdom Come.
And you wanted to like eject him from the
And I
movie?
thought,
That's
no, I was
perfect.
just like, it was just like my director was ready to kill himself. He's looking at me
How
like,
much
oh my.
awkward silence was there?
Well, no. And this is
Huh?
what I discovered. And I didn't realize this at all, but Jim Lee told me this was that because we were going to put Jim Lee in there, but we didn't have just the time constraints and the budget. We ran out and we just, Jim told me that the Image guys, when Kingdom Come came out, thought that it was a knock against the Image guys.
Mm.
They thought that it was, Alex and Mark were kind of making fun of or saying that it was a statement against
Oh,
the
because of
publisher.
the extreme characters in it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And it's not true because when I was talking to Alex is like, no way. It had nothing to do with that because Alex thought what they were doing was cool. They're indie artists. They're creating their own stuff. Good for them. But so at the time, that's why Todd never read it.
Mm.
And I said, Todd, I'm telling you, I know Alex better than anybody. It is not a knock against Image. Believe me.
Wow.
I had no idea until Todd told me that. Until Jim was the one that said it too. He goes, no, when we heard about Kingdom Come, that was the rumor, was that it was a knock against Image.
It's
Well,
tough going through life thinking everything is about you.
Well, I mean, but you got to remember during the Image years, for as popular as they were, there were a lot of creators that were not fans of that stuff
well,
Yeah.
even till this day.
to this day.
Yeah.
So I mean, from that, there's that insecurity level that I think, I can understand. But yeah, I was kind of like, why would a guy do a graphic novel?
Yeah.
His father's the main character who's a minister. So why would he go out of, it was it was a passion project for him. So it had nothing to do with those guys.
Right.
Well,
That's
I'm
so
already,
cool. Now I'm super curious. I'm gonna have to get a copy of it.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess if you look at it that way, when you're reading it, you could find, but then again, you could do that with anything. You could once you want to slant it and look for evidence to support what you believe, I guess you can see it. I don't get it, but
Right.
remember, Sal, it's not the truth, it's my truth or your truth.
yeah,
His truth.
I thought it was hilarious
Yeah.
though, because he gave such a great interview about, the comics field and his approach to work and Alex, and he could not have been more complimentary about Alex and then he's like, no, I never read it.
Well, we're definitely going to include that in the thumbnail, the description. Be like, did Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee read Kingdom Come? Watch to find out.
He knew Marvels. He knew all the stuff Alex did, but I just, for whatever, Jim read it. Jim knew. My God, he's the guy over at DC. I'm assuming he read it at this point. My God, or he's gonna lie and say he did.
I even have Alex's Absolute Justice. Like that's another one I have.
Yeah.
So I'm all about
Yeah.
it.
And
That's
all the treasury books he did over at DC.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I had to put that stupid costume on again for power.
Are are there any things of you in costume on in
Oh
the
yeah.
awesome?
Oh no, no, not in the dock. That I refuse to
Oh,
do.
okay.
I mean, if they gave me an Academy Award, I might put on the costume, but otherwise, that was a couple of chins ago. That costume won't fit me.
No, I understand. I'm working on that myself, so I'm working on it. I
No,
have
he had two costumes that he had made that,
actually made.
he had we had this woman who was a costumer that we knew in the neighbor, and he knew in the circle of friends he had. And so he had a lot of costumes made for his photo reference. So one of them was this horrible Captain Marvel costume that he had me put on, and you
Hmm.
know it was not the greatest, but I did, the things you do is to help your friends out.
There you
Sure,
go.
sure. Scott, I would definitely put a cape on for a picture, bro. I got you. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
We'll
That's
let you
awesome.
go. I want to leave one last thought with you, going back to a reference you made earlier. When we went to that Big Apple Con at Penn Station, one of the people that was there getting autographs was the actor who played the Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie.
No,
So there you go.
cool. I sat next to when I was at that show. I sat next to Cyrus from the Warriors.
Oh, wow.
And he was this little librarian guy who had these round. I swear to God, in a million years, you never would have recognized him. He had long hair and he had these little John Lennon glasses, and he's selling these pictures of Cyrus. Can you dig it? And I'm like, oh my God, that's Cyrus.
Could be
I
anybody.
never would have guessed. And I was sitting next to him the whole time. And on the right was Lacey Underall from Caddyshack.
Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.